Hello, everyone. And I am very excited to have Howard Storm with us, who is coming all the way from Kentucky, just outside of Cincinnati. I have long wanted to speak with this man. I read his book, My Descent into Death, some 20 odd years ago, and I've returned to it again and again. I think his experience will really speak to a lot of aspects of recovery and especially 12-step spirituality. So with that, Howard, maybe just introduce yourself and whatever you think is relevant to the audience.
Yeah, I'd like to give a little bit of background of who I was, so that it makes more sense how I got to the place that I am now. I was raised in a suburb of Boston, and my dad was a World War II veteran in the Navy, the Pacific, and when he came back, my mother told me many times that he was unrecognized. The war, being in the Navy, had completely changed him. He was a very, very hard man and a very cruel man. And the dysfunctional, I know everybody in a sense has come from a dysfunctional family. I don't think anybody can claim that their family was perfect and without problems, but it was exceptionally dysfunctional. I mean, a lot of beatings and hitting and yelling and screaming daily, not occasionally. And so being me and my sisters being, forced, sometimes willingly and sometimes unwillingly, to go to church, ended as soon as we could. When we became early teens, we didn't want to go in again. And I was very interested in church in an early age, but as a teenager, realized the contrast between all this love and goodness and nice stuff that we heard in church and what happened in the parking lot immediately after church, with my father slugging us, hitting us and screaming at us and cussing at us because we had fidgeted or because we'd picked our nose or played with the bulletin or something like that. It's like, hey, what's wrong with this picture, Yeah. So as an early teen, I became I eventually convinced myself that there was no God, and I was became very worldly. I was very, very wild, and I don't want to go into my drug-a-lug or dope-a-lug. By 14, I was doing everything, and when I say everything, I mean everything. Went to San Francisco in 1966 because I heard that was where to go, and I did more stuff.
Right, didn't you?
Yeah, I did more stuff. So to quote Jimi Hendrix, I am experienced. And at the time, it was all, drug, sex, and rock and roll. It seemed like the way to go. And also there was a belief in my generation, I was born in 46, baby boomer, that none of us were going to live past 30 anyways. There was going to be a nuclear war or whatever. And, life seemed completely hopeless. And so we just all turned to hedonism, which in a way is a reasonable thing to do when you're going to die young and the whole world's going to be blown up with nuclear weapons. And then went to college, worked my way through college and had a family, and got a career as a college teacher and stuff like that. And all my friends were atheists, and we all drank a lot. Social drinking. I don't think that I was ever an alcoholic because I could control my drinking, but I drank a lot. We consumed enormous amounts of liquor. I stopped using drugs because that wasn't compatible with, I was a college professor and that just wasn't compatible with that. That's frankly too much of a risk.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to go to jail,
Right.
you know, blow my, everything that I worked for. So anyways, very A-type personality. I became quickly the head of the academic department that I was in. I was very controlling, totally self-centered, and lived for myself. There was one problem with this beautiful, happy American Pie picture. You know, the wife and the two kids and the house in the suburbs and the car and all that stuff was, I scared myself, like driving home late at night, having been drinking with my buddies all night, and it's like 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I just wanted to drive my car at 100 miles an hour into a bridge abutment or off a hill or something. And it used to freak me out because there was part of me that really, really wanted to do that. And the only way that I can explain it is sort of metaphorically, like there was this huge emptiness inside of me. So although if you had said to me, how you doing? I would have said, I'm great. I'm perfect. I'm fine. Screw you. You know, I mean, why would you even ask? I mean, can't you see I'm fabulous? You know, that's what I would have said.
Mm-hmm.
In truth, there was something very, very missing in my life, very, very empty in my life, and I didn't know what it was. So the way I like to describe it was I was trying to fill that hole in me with alcohol, with sex to the max. That was my big interest in life. Power, controlling people, being self-sufficient. I didn't ask people for help. Like I built my own house with my own hands with very little help, you know, stuff like that. I mean, it's just like, I can do anything if I want to, kind of attitude. Very self-contained. Arrogant, you know, and consider myself basically the center of the universe. And not too interested in other people except in what they basically served my ends, you know. And if they didn't serve my ends, I had nothing to do with them. So that's where I was. That's my self-portrait.
Mm-hmm. And did you know there was something wrong? You say you would say to people things are great, but in your own inner monologue, did you say something's not right here, this is messed up? Or did you lack awareness?
Absolutely. And it was very disturbing because like I was achieving everything that I thought I should be achieving. You know, it was like, you know, the top of the game, making good money, you know, winning awards and honors and promotions and stuff like that. And like none of it meant anything.
Yeah. And then you take a fateful, was it a class trip to Paris?
Yeah, I took a group of students to Europe. We went all over Europe, and this was a 3-week art tour of Europe. I was an art professor, and on the next to the last day before we to leave, we were in Paris, and I blew out a hole in my small stomach, which is called a duodenum, and it knocked me right to the ground. I thought I'd been shot by a bullet. I mean, it's most acute pain. It just came from nowhere, because what was happening was the stomach acid stuff was leaking to my abdominal cavity. So my wife, this happened.
What caused that? We know.
Me. Stomach acid, you know, probably an ulceration that just went all the way through. But I mean, if you want me to blame it, I can blame it on gin. I was drinking a lot of. I discovered Univer Yun. Univer Old was a little too strong for me. It was about 160 proof. Univer Yun was about 110 proof, which I drank neat, and a lot of it. A lot. You know, it kind of kept me in a good mood, you know. And so, but I can't blame the poor old gin. You know, it was me. And Coca-Colas and popping lots of aspirins, you know, and it's just, you know, insane, you know, I mean, crazy stuff. So I was, my wife called the hotel, this was 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning. She called the hotel desk and they called an emergency service. The doctor came, knew exactly what was wrong, told me I had to have surgery immediately or I'd die. And an ambulance came and they took me to the big city hospital in Paris, which is many city blocks, big municipal hospital. And I was taken to emergency and examined there by a couple doctors and told the same thing, that if I didn't have the surgery right away, I'd be dead. In case anybody was wondering, what happens is you become so septic, you know, you can't recover. So anyways, I was taken over to the surgical hospital because of the socialized medicine and the way it was set up. There was, I didn't know it, but there was no surgeon at the surgical hospital available. So I was never put under the care of a doctor. I was just parked in a room to wait for a surgeon to come. And in Paris, they told me my life expectancy was like an hour or two. American doctors said, yeah, that's about right. Maybe a few hours at the most, and then you die. 10 hours later, never having seen a doctor, never having been given any treatment or medication, nothing, no narcotics, which I begged for. I mean, begged because the pain, which had dropped me to the ground, kicking and screaming and yelling, got worse and worse. It was mind-blowing pain. I don't mean mind-blowing in a good sense. I mean, it's, you know, I couldn't think or anything. Basically what I was doing was trying to breathe. That's all I was doing, was trying to, because I knew that if I stopped breathing, I would die. And I didn't want to die because I knew that when you died, there was nothing afterwards. I mean, I knew that. All my friends, they were all college faculty. They all knew that. And anyone that believed otherwise would considered to be basically an idiot, you know, who believed in fairy tales. So nurse came in and said that they were unable to locate a doctor. This was at 8:30 at night, and that they would try and get one the next day. Well, I figured that that's it. No, there's no more point in trying to do this anymore, because I was trying with all my might to breathe, which basically consisted of breathe in and breathe out. The problem with breathing is it agitates your abdomen through your diaphragm, and that intensified the pain every time I breathed. So it was really, that's what I was fighting, was I didn't want the pain, but I also wanted the breath. So anyways, so I let go and let myself go into death. I went unconscious. I want to abbreviate all this because I want to get to some more interesting stuff. But I woke from it. I felt wonderful. I was standing there in the room, felt better than I ever felt in my whole life. And I thought I'd recovered, except that there were a couple problems. One was that there was something in the bed that I had been in that looked exactly like me. And I knew that it was meat, just meat. And that was very disturbing, because how could it look like me? Because it wasn't me. I mean, because I'm standing here looking at it, you know, that can't be me. And the other thing was that I tried to communicate with my wife and my roommate, who was a very kind Frenchman, and neither of them would interact with me at all, as if I wasn't there, which made me very angry, because I was there. I mean, I was real, and they were like ignoring me, which made me very mad. And then I heard people calling me outside the room. And so I went, they told me to come with them. I thought that they were going to take me to a doctor, which they had implied. They didn't say that, but they implied it. And so they took me on a long journey into darkness. And in that darkness, they turned on me and tore me apart, literally. And it hurt just like it would hurt in this world. And they did it with, and they were having fun. I mean, they were laughing and joking and biting and clawing and tearing and invading me. And all the while, this was like, I was completely annihilated. And I heard a voice, I don't know where it came from or who it was, but anyway, it said, pray to God. And I thought, I don't believe in God, I don't pray. And the voice said, pray to God. And I thought, I don't know how to pray. I can't pray. And the voice said, pray to God. And I thought, okay. When I was a kid and went to Sunday school, we learned prayers. I was trying to remember something, and I was having a lot of difficulty remembering things, getting it all confused with everything that I memorized in my school years. And I came up with a couple phrases. And when I said them, the people around me became very angry and told me there was no God, nobody could hear me, and they were going to make things much worse for me if I didn't stop. And for the first time, I was able to give them a little payback by saying God stuff. So I started making stuff about God, which was so vulgar and crude that I would never repeat it again, because it was like really, really. But I was threatening them with God, which I didn't believe in, by the way. But it was a wonderful tool, and it drove them away from me, and they disappeared back into the darkness. So I was left there all alone in that place. This is a really important part of my experience that I don't talk about much, because I had an opportunity to think about my life. And in summary, what I concluded is that I had failed as a son to my mother and father. Our relationship was extremely strained. My relationship with my father was non-existent. We hated each other. Had very little opportunity to see my mother, since my father and my mother lived with my father, so there's a problem. I had very little relationship with my sisters. I had my relationship with my wife was lousy. My relationship with my kids was, superficial. I thought about how my students, I thought about my, they were okay, they were kind of fun, but basically they're kind of a pain in the ass. They interfered with my greatness, the demands. I realized that in all of my relationships in the world, it was all a big nothing. But the biggest realization that I had was that, as important and as great as I was, I came to the conclusion that I was nobody. I was in my own imagination, a big fish in a little pond, but I was actually just a medium little fish in a little pond, and by no means the important person that I pretended or thought that I was. It was very. This is taking me deeper and deeper into despair. And I realized that I was stuck in this place of horror and torment and cruelty, and there was no way out. And I absolutely felt that this is right. This is where jerks like me go. I never felt like, this is wrong, how could they do this? It was just like, and I also felt that the people that had attacked me had been the people just like me, my friends, they were sort of like my brothers and sisters, spiritually. And that the only way I was going to make it in this place was that somehow I was going to have to get my act together physically and emotionally and become better than they were. I didn't want to be a victim anymore. And the only way you could, in this place, that you could cease being a victim was to be the victimizer. Which is, I think, pretty much what they'd all come to the realization too. Basically, it was a dog-eat-dog rat pile. And I really didn't want to do that. And couldn't think of a way out when I remembered a song and the feelings that I had in that song as a little boy in Sunday school, which was Jesus loves me, this I know. And I remembered that as a little boy, I had believed that there was this superhero guy named Jesus. And when I had nightmares or when I was afraid or when I was in trouble, I used to ask him for help and he would always help me out. And I thought, maybe that's it. Maybe that's the way out. No idea whether that was true or not, or whether it was just the delusions of a little kid, but it was the only thing I could think of. So I called out to him in utter desperation, which I don't know if that's the same thing as faith, but I don't think it is. And he came and he took me out of there. He took me up to the outside of heaven. He called over a group of angels and we did a life review and we went over my life, which was, he was totally not judgmental, but I could see that my life was a big disappointment to both him and to the angels, because what they were looking for in my life was being a kind and loving person, which is not what I was. I was a successful person. I was a high achieving person. Mm-hmm. I was an intelligent person, but kind and loving were not things that I was interested in. Mm-hmm. And so anyways, he asked me if I had any questions. And I said, I got a million questions. So I asked him everything I could think of to ask him, and he answered everything very nicely. He showed me things, took me places, and then he gave me the bad news that I had to come back to this world and try and he was giving me a redo, chance to do it again. And when I asked him, what do you want me to do if I do go back? Because I didn't want to come back. I wanted to go to heaven, which he told me was not an option at that time. He said, I want you to love the person that you're with. And I said, yeah, but what do you want me to do? And he said, no, that's what I want you to do, is love the person you're with. And I said, yeah, but what good will that do? And we had a big conversation about that, because I just didn't see the point. What is the point of loving the person? Well, anyways, so this all happened 35 years ago. And I'm still trying to figure out how to love the person that I'm with, which I'm getting a little better at, but I'm certainly not, I haven't mastered it, you know, but that is my conscious intention in my relationships, is to be as loving as possible. And that may sound simple, but it's easy when you're with some sweet little old lady or something. That's not hard. But when you're with someone that hates you and, mocks you and is cruel to you, it's kind of interesting trying to know how to love them. I mean, sometimes it means putting as much distance between them and you as possible. Sometimes the best way to love someone is to walk away, because they clearly are venting their stuff on you, and I don't need it, and I can't fix them. And that's one of the things that I've learned. I can't fix anybody. If someone asks me for help, I can offer my help, but my job is not to fix people or to change them. My job is to just love them the way they are. And so that's what I try to do.
Well, that's certainly, if you were talking to a mature 12-stepper, I think they would sound pretty similar. Although I do think, if, not to compare the drama of my experience, I certainly went through a phase where I was hell-bent on fixing and saving people.
Yeah.
Did you go through something comparable to that?
Yeah. It's embarrassing. After my experience with Jesus and the angels and all this stuff, I got real religious. And I thought I could change the world by memorizing scriptures and then blasting people with that. So this was there's a form named confrontational evangelism. And I literally drove away and turned off everybody I knew. My wife, my kids, my friends, my mother, my father, my sister. I mean, I drove everybody away from me because the more they showed displeasure with being blasted with scripture, the more I blasted them. Yeah. And I even developed a term called thunder preaching. I mean, we're talking about like, this is insanity. I mean, so counterproductive. I mean, when I see like a guy on the street corner, you know, like, you know, screaming scripture at people, or you whores, you know, you daughters of, you know, perdition, you're all going to burn. You know, I just want to go through like, man, you're turning everybody off. You're like, please don't do that, you know. But I don't, you know. It's embarrassing, and I did that for a few months. Didn't, you know, I finally figured out that it was not working after a few months.
One of the places where I did laugh a few times, quite a few times in my descent into death. But when you were talking about this strange new Howard that came back to the world, and you're talking about, you know, this sudden interest in things spiritual and this desire to go to church, the scene where you are on crutches and you're late for the service, and it's a UCC church too, and you see the angels basking in the hymns, and you fall to your prostrate yourself. That is one of my favorite things I've ever.
And you know, and the thing is that the people at church have never mentioned that to me. I've actually asked. Yeah, I that's my home church, and that's where I go. I've retired, so I love the people there, and I've asked some people like, do you remember me doing that? And they go, yeah. And I said, didn't you think that was pretty? Because we're the frozen chosen. We're not a Pentecostal church. No.
Oh yeah, that's what I love about it, because I've got a long history with the UCC. Yeah, I went to a UCC seminary.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just trying to picture that. Yeah. So what was seminary like for you? Obviously, it must have been informed by this experience, totally.
I love seminary because, first of all, with a bunch of people, there were, my class started off with 90 people. It was a Methodist seminary, United Theological Seminary in Dayton, Ohio. And so 90 of us that began, 60 finished. But anyways, so wonderful people, because we're all, you know, interested in the same sort of stuff. So we just had wonderful conversations and friendships and things like that. And overwhelming majority of people were all second career people. There were very few people like in their 20s, you know, and there were people, I was in my early 40s, but there were other people in their 60s and stuff going to seminary. So there's a wonderful mix of people, and it didn't change my faith one bit, but I learned an enormous amount about how to articulate my faith. I learned about the history of the evolving history of the Judeo-Christian tradition. It was a great experience. I mean this quite seriously, if I could have just stayed in seminary for the rest of my life, that would have been heaven.
I went to seminary myself, and I agree with you. I did it on the heels of my recovery experience.
Yeah.
Sounds very similar. Did you out yourself at seminary?
About my experience?
Yeah.
No, because I had learned that most people don't want to hear it, and religious people in particular aren't necessarily interested.
Mm-hmm.
So I never talked about it at seminary, ever.
And yet the tradition, broadly understood, is there's a lot of experiences like this.
Yeah.
I mean, the risen, you were not the first person to encounter the risen Christ.
Amen.
Last.
Yeah, let me just tell you this little anecdote. So the first church that I served as full-time pastor, I talked about having experiences of God. I didn't talk about my experience, but in my sermon, I talked about like people can have experience of God. And a little old lady, like in her late 80s, came up to me and she said, "Pastor, I've never told anybody about this." And then she proceeded to tell me about it. One day she was in the church alone, tidying up the pews. That was her little job. She was the woman who, straightened out the hymnals and the visitor pads and stuff like that. And Jesus came to her and spoke to her that he loved her. And she'd never told anyone. And she said, "Pastor, I'm telling you because I don't think you're going to make fun of me because you said it's okay." I said, "Yeah, it's more than okay. It's so beautiful. But if you don't want me to, I won't talk about it. I'm not going to mention it to anybody because I don't want to put you on the spot. But like, me too. I've met Jesus too, There's a lot of people out there that have had wonderful mystical experiences, and I'm by no means the only one."
So you were an active clergy member for how long before you decided to write the book?
I started serving churches as a student pastor in '88. That was when I went to seminary. That was part of the requirement. You had to be a student pastor, and so I started in '88, and I wrote the book in '99.
And was there some sort of internal journey you had to go on to make that decision to write the book, or did you know in your heart that that book needed to be written before you were going?
Well, I started to write the book much earlier, like right after the experience. I started to write a book, and I was going to these meetings called IANS, International Association Near Death Studies. Met at a church in Cincinnati, which was very, very helpful for me to be in that group. And there was an old man there, and he sort of became my mentor. He was in his 90s, and but I thought he was very wise, and he told me not to write a book because if I did, it would appear that I was trying to cash in on my experience. And I thought that was like, a word from God. So I just put that all aside. And then in '99, a publisher from England called me on the phone and asked me if I'd write a book.
Was that Clairview?
Yeah. And I thought, okay, that's what God wants me to do. So I wrote the book and he published it.
How did the folks, from the anthroposophical world find out about you? How'd they know there was this UCC minister who had this encounter?
I don't know.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. Because I don't know if you know this or not, you probably do. In the anthroposophical worldview, in this time, in the 20th century, they believe that this kind of encounter that you're having is they call it the reappearance of the Christ in the etheric or something. And they say it's going to happen with more and more frequency. And
I believe that. I believe that. I haven't, that's the first time I've heard it, but I absolutely believe that.
That's so interesting. That's the first time you've heard it.
Yeah.
So my experience is kind of funny. I have I don't have a near-death experience, but I have the experience of heroin addiction. And I also had this deep knowledge that whatever solution there was going to be to that, or conviction, I should say, it was going to be spiritual. And so I got sober, and I'm seeking God desperately. So I'm going to church with my parents. I'm praying a lot, and I'm reading all this spiritual literature. And I'm not doing very well. In fact, I'm decompensating. I'd get relief from prayer sometimes, but then this kind of madness would creep back in. And then I meet this old felon who takes me through the 12 steps, which nobody did the 12 steps. They just paid lip service, but this, you know, make the amends, go see the people, blah, blah, blah. And I do it and I get complete relief. And I knew enough about Christianity. I'm like, that's what's happening here. And so I go to seminary in light of that experience. And probably like you, that experience informed my seminary experience more than the other way. And I met a woman there who introduced me to some of this anthroposophical stuff. And she's the one who introduced me to your book.
Huh.
I'm reading that book and I'm like, you know, this is, everyone in the 12-step world needs to read this book. So I became an evangelist with your book.
Okay.
Because like you said, before we started, we turned on the recording, this is about rock bottom confrontation with a certain kind of truth. Rudolf Steiner once said, the essence of Christianity is the experience of powerlessness and the release from powerlessness.
Huh. That's
And,
good.
Yeah.
Can I add my own?
Please, this is you.
So to put it simply, what I think happened was because of the dissonance in my youth, which is, you know, our youth is so formative, it's more formative than we believe. I developed a suit of armor. I was really into knights and armor and stuff like that. And so anyways, I developed a suit of armor, which was self-sufficiency, self-control. Like I never laughed, I never cried. I cried one time before my near-death experience when my grandfather died. I cried at his, I love my grandfather, and I cried at his funeral. It's the only time I ever cried in my adult life. I psyched people out. I knew what they were going to say before they said it. I was in control. I was me. I did what I want. I was a bully. When I was 6'2", I was a shot putter and discus thrower in high school. You know, like I used my physical. I was the strongest person I knew. Honestly, I really was. You know, as a college professor, when someone would make me mad, I would move in on them. I'd get closer and closer and closer. And you know what they did? They'd back off, back off, back off. They always caved. They always caved. Because, I mean, people knew I was dangerous. And I used that. So that was my armor. I was steel plated. There's only one problem with a suit of armor. You can't grow. It's suffocating. It's really suffocating. And so I think what was happening is that my spirit, my soul, whatever you want to call it, wanted to do more, wanted to connect with people, wanted to love, you know, wanted to be vulnerable, wanted to be able to cry, you know, wanted to be able to laugh. Wanted to be vulnerable. And I couldn't. So what happened was I blew up. You know, when you know, when I think of blowing a hole in the middle of my abdomen,
Yeah.
I mean, I literally, you know, it was like an engine that blows a gasket, you know, which, by the way, destroys the engine. You know, I mean, it can be fatal, you know. And I look at that as a psychosomatic thing, but it's also psychosomatic, but also deeply spiritual thing of like hitting the bottom. But it freed me to all of a sudden to become a human being and stop trying to be what I was trying to be was an Übermensch, a Nietzschean Übermensch, which Friedrich Nietzsche, who I think is such a sad character in philosophy, but basically the idea was to become a Superman beyond emotion. And the Nazis adopted a lot of Nietzsche in there. That's theoretically what enabled them to be able to run concentration camps, because like you don't care, you just like watch men and women and children die, and it's like, that's fine, get rid of them, it's okay. Of course, many of them became alcoholics in the process because it's kind of hard to do that. Anyways, so I see it ultimately, my hitting the bottom, blowing up, is kind of the big bottom, as a gift. And I think that when that happened, I was suddenly able to connect with what is really good and true in this world.
Yeah, and it's like you got a depth of vulnerability like all at once.
Yeah, yeah.
So you become a minister and you start ministering to people, and I got this a little bit in your story, but not as much with other near-death narratives. A lot of people really pine to go back, that it's kind of hard to make the adjustment here. They want to go back and be with you. Did you have that for a long time?
I still have it. I had 35 years. I call it homesick. So the problem with this world is this world could be a paradise. If we were kind and loving towards each other, this world would be a beautiful place to be. But unfortunately, there's so many people that they want to dominate, they want to control, they want to use, they want to abuse. It's like, this may sound smug, but I just want to go around and, I don't do this, but I want to slap people and say, stop it, stop it. You want to be loved. I know you do. You want me to love you, and you're not letting me love you because you're acting like a complete jerk. Why don't you just cut it out, and just be a real human being? It's like, I'm a crybaby now. I cry all the time. I cry when I see something sad, and I cry when I'm happy, and I think crying is very, very therapeutic. And I see people doing bad things to each other, and it makes me sad. It makes me cry,
But as a Christian, you must have a sense that the moral arc of things is towards the good and the fullness of things.
Yeah, but 2,000 years of having the way, the truth, and the life being shown to us, which I see as an inclusive statement, not an exclusive statement. As far as God's concerned, I think that he loves everybody equally, whether they're wherever they are, wherever they're coming from, because we're all deficient and flawed human beings, and that certainly includes all the Christians. 2,000 years of this is the big commandment: love one another as I have loved you. That was the big commandment. The summation of all the law, the whole shtick's right there, to love one another. And 2,000 years of having received that, and how much further along are we from the Roman Empire? Well, a little bit. We do the blood sports virtually, as opposed to real. We're not all sitting around in arenas watching women and children being torn apart by wild animals and cheering, which is what the Romans did. Good for us, but we certainly see a lot of enough blood and gore, vicariously in our TV and movies.
But part of your vision, though, was a future that looks very different than this.
Yes.
A future here.
Yes, and it's what I believe God wants what Jesus wants, what the universe wants, what's the whole cosmic consciousness is heading towards, and it's going to happen. There are days when I go like, really? Seriously? But it is going to happen, and it is going to be a world of harmony, and people are going to live, in loving communities. And the main interest of the community is children. And this was explained to me in my experience. One of the big failures of us is we don't take raising children seriously enough, which is the responsibility of the whole community, not just the family, but everybody. And that when we get to that place, we're going to live in harmony with nature, and we're going to be given abilities, amazing abilities to live in harmony with nature.
And you've also, in this time, I've watched some of the videos and read some of the things you've written since I read your book, but I check in every year or two. And you seem to be still having certain experiences that aren't really, they're far from conventional. Has that been with you since this event? Like you get told where to go, or someone shows up, or you have a dream, or is that how you've lived since then?
Yeah, and in a way, I feel like I'm very, very blessed. Let me just tell you an example. I did 27 trips to a Mayan village, mission trips to a Mayan village in Belize, Central America, which I'm still in touch with. Matter of fact, I'm doing some stuff with them right now. Great people. I love Mayan people. And my second trip there, one of the most important men in that community, who was a former drug dealer. He had worked for the American Mafia as there was a relay station between Colombia and the US, and he was in charge of unloading planes and shipping cocaine into the US. But he'd gotten out of the business. He'd had a big conversion and gotten out of the business, and actually miraculously managed to retire from the Mafia, which is impossible. That was part of his conversion, that they let him live. Anyways, he told me, he said, I'm really worried because the word's out that you're a dead man. I said, what are you talking about? And he said, they're going to kill you. And I said, why would they kill me? I'm like doing good stuff down here. I'm, helping people, building homes and schools, and, sending kids to, high school and stuff. Why would they want to do that? I said, the money that you have. And I said, how do they know about the money? And he said, everybody knows you got money because you spend, because when I went down there, I'd spend thousands of dollars doing, you can't build houses and schools without money, you got to buy materials and things. So anyways, I mean, everybody knew I had money. They had no idea how much money. And he said, the word's out. You're done. And he said, he said, you're going to have to be really, really careful. And I said, his name was Urbano. And I said, Urbano, I can't do that. I said, look, it's a win-win. If they kill me, I go to heaven, If they don't kill me, I do the work. But I can't stop doing what I'm doing. And he said, I'm really, really worried about you. I said, well, Urbano, I said, God's going to watch over me. Well, I did. That was my second or third trip down there, and I did 25 more, and nothing ever happened. And I wasn't careful, because I mean, part of my joy was sitting in a house with a woman or a family and talking to them about their life. That was, for me, was the best part of the whole time I was down there, was just that one-on-one time with a family, going over what's going on, Is there anything we can do to help you? Blah, blah, blah. Building the houses, building the schools. We built 4 churches and stuff like that. I mean, that was nice. But that, for me, the best part was just being alone in a person's house, sharing their life.
Yeah.
No. So anyways, and that may not sound too spectacular, but a man who knew I was marked to be murdered and robbed.
Mm-hmm.
And it never happened. I was never threatened down there.
Mm-hmm.
God takes care of fools, and I am the fool of the world.
And then a lot of people started reaching out to you, not unlike, I'm an example. So you've got people reach out to you from all Christian denominations, certainly.
Oh, no, mostly I have people that reach out to me from all over the world. I get emails from all over the world every day. And a lot of times they're not Christians. I have a really interesting life because I Skype and Zoom and email with people all over the place about all kinds of things, Buddhists and Hindus and Muslims, and it's great.
Is there a general set of questions or concerns they bring to you, or is it?
There's some category. I mean, I don't mean this to demean anybody, but the categories are like people's love life. They're looking for a partner and they want advice about how to get one. People who are gay or lesbian or trans want to know if they're okay with God, and of course I'm trying to tell them, yeah, God loves you. You're fine. No worries. Just be good to your partner. People who have done things that they don't feel they can ever be forgiven for. Get a lot of that. And I try to be patient and kind with those kind of things, but it's like, come on, God can do this. God has done it. I mean, Jesus on the cross, what more do you want? Like, what does he have to do to prove it that he wants to forgive us? I mean, God's forgiveness is so there, and all we have to do is just accept it. So it's stuff like that, and then of course there's another category of like, what about these other worlds and other people and other other planets, stuff like that.
Right. So the forgiveness of sins, it's big with the recovery community. So, in effect, we do self-examination in a 4th step, and then we do confession in a 5th step. More often than not, people get tremendous relief, cathartic. But many people have, given the addict lifestyle, they got a lot of residual shame and guilt that goes with them. And I know that you have to accept that you're accepted, forgiven, but is there something you can tell us about, I'm asking an impossible question, the nature of that gesture of, I'm forgiven and now I need to live into that?
Yeah, I think that, I do that. I've done this, I do it, and this is what I tell people to do. Give it to God. You go to God and you tell him flat out the unvarnished truth of how you feel. And if you've got to cuss God out, let him have it, both barrels. Unload everything inside of you about that shame and that guilt or anger or resentment or whatever it is. Just blast God with it. And, one of the things that's really sad about churches. Everybody wants to be on their best behavior and like seem like they've got their stuff together. And that's why I've been to a lot of AA groups and Al-Anon groups and stuff like that. And I like them because there's a lot more honesty in those groups than there ever is in any kind of church group I've ever been in. I wish the church was a lot more like AA or Al-Anon than everybody pretending that everything's good. So you need to do this where there's nobody around. Like I highly recommend empty churches as a good place to do it. But by the on the beach, on the banks of a river, in a forest, those are also perfectly good holy places. Any place that's a sacred place is a good place to do it. Lay it all out to God, and you know what? God knows everything. God knows everything. God is consciousness, super consciousness. So God knows, like, all that stuff that you're holding inside. You give it to God. Give it to Him. I mean, you literally say, can I say this? Okay, here's all my shit, God. I am dumping all my shit on you. Take it. I don't want it anymore. I'm tired of it.
Is it important to voice it in specificity?
Yes, absolutely. And you know what? When you give it away, when you really give it away, it's gone. It's so freeing. It's so freeing because all that shame and that guilt stuff is absolutely, it's like the chains in, that Maury wore in Christmas Carol, just stuff that weighs you down. It's doing you no good. It's just sinking you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I know I've fallen prey to this, you can get in this 12-step lifestyle where you're going to be the guy who does everything for everybody. But if you still got some of that going on, you're trying to make up for that by being good. It just wear you out.
Yeah.
Trauma. So even in your case, you alluded to this, especially with childhood. You alluded to what I imagine was deep and wounding trauma at the hands of your father, which of course probably built up the armor. Do you feel that you were healed? That experience healed that trauma?
Largely, but I also, I had a good friend who was a psychiatrist, and one day he said to me, you got PTSD. I'm going, you think? He said, yeah, actually you do. And he said, I've got a procedure. And we did REM, rapid eye movement therapy.
Yeah.
Wonderfully healing. And so I think making use of therapy, having someone that you can relate to and trust. I was fortunate because this guy, I trusted him to take me to some places that I would never want to go on my own. We in the RAM stuff, which is
rapid eye movement.
Yeah, going deep. We went to some really scary places, and
it's somatic, right? Body, somatic.
Yeah.
So that's really good to hear, because there is a tendency in the 12-step world that if you're doing these steps right and you're forgiving these people, you shouldn't, they minimize the trauma. And to hear it from somebody who's had your experience, that there's still stuff that there's healing that can happen post-conversion, I think that's a very important message, at least to the audience.
I met my first wife dumped me. She divorced me, and I was going to Al-Anon, and we did the 13th step at Al-Anon. We fell in love. I know. And you know what? The reason why I fell in love with her is I had seen her at meetings and never thought about her one way or another. And one time she had a lead, and it's like, I cried my heart out when she did her lead, because She was the most honest, broken human being I have ever heard in my whole life, and spoke about it openly. She spoke about her brokenness. And I was like, damn, I'm broken. I just met a woman who knows she is broken. I want to know this woman. So we started talking. There was no romantic thing at all. And we started talking, and then we started holding hands, and then we started snuggling, and then we started kissing, and we fell in love. And I told her about me, and I learned about her. And it's like, I want to be with someone who can really be open and do the work, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that, okay, flat out. The problem is people don't want to do the work. Do the work, you know, and get healed. You know, heal that brokenness. We're all broken.
Mm-hmm.
I love people that know they're broken. And you know who scares me? People who don't know that or won't admit it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you described, that armor, intimacy without vulnerability is what I call it. They want to be invulnerable, and they still crave some kind of intimacy, and that dynamic will create really cruel people.
Yeah.
And it looks like some people succeed in it.
Yeah.
They achieve invulnerability at everyone else, including themselves, expense.
Yes. And it's scary when they become leaders of our country.
Yeah, it really is. Are you in contact with Christian congregations around the world?
Yeah. I've had the opportunity to go to places like China and Africa and Europe and Central and South America. And recently I went to Kenya and spent 2 weeks in Kenya. And I have never met such loving, wonderful people. The Kenyan pastor who invited me over there that took me around, his name's James Adiwo. And because of this pandemic, I was supposed to go back this year. I really want to go. I want to go back to Kenya because I fell in love with the Kenyan people. They are so warm. And I just got to mention, because I'm old and a lot of people in Kenya don't get very old, you know, life expectancy shorter. I was revered. My name in Kenya was Papa, which means grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere I went, I was treated like, you know, this esteemed grandfather figure. It was like, I like this job. This is great. You know, people always concerned with my welfare and treating me so well. And they're beautiful people, gorgeous people.
Do they receive your experience differently than Anglo-European?
More open.
Yeah.
They're way more open.
Yeah. So we hear a lot about, we live in a post-Christian world and the decline of that. And yet there's part of me that feels like you're getting it wrong. It's still living and moving, and it's moving in ways that maybe watching TV in New York, you can't see it, but it's still alive and moving. And in fact, if anything, it might still be very young. It's still, yeah. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. The formal church got ossified, meaning rigid, formal, uptight, and somehow, you know, Martin Luther said the church is ever in need of reform. Well, I think we're going through a huge reformation. I mean, the church is now taking the show, and a lot of people are talking about house churches is the future of the church, where it's just a group of like a dozen people meeting in a house once a week, you know, totally casual, you know, very little ritual, no clergy, no particularly. One of the things that I loved about AA and Al-Anon was, there's no leader. There's no professional running the group. You know, people take turns. I mean, this may sound corny, but maybe that's the future of the church, is to be more like AA and Al-Anon. Maybe that, because I mean, okay, I don't want to offend anybody, but I really do think that AA and Al-Anon are the church. I mean, sorry, I really do think they are the church. So I'm saying, like, why don't we just merge that whole thing into the future church? Although I got to admit, I do like cathedrals. I mean, I like all the bells and whistles too, you know?
Yeah. I often tell people that I have, especially when I go to like a musty seminary library, or when I go into these old churches, I tell people that I have a deep nostalgia for something I never experienced.
Huh.
I feel like I'm coming home. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that feeling.
Yeah. But I absolutely believe that, to use the Christianese, the Holy Spirit is every bit present and active at an AA or an Al-Anon meeting as it is in any church, sometimes more so.
Yeah. So, what would you tell somebody trying to negotiate the waters of now, with all the stress and fear and drug addiction getting worse, frankly, and parents hopeless about their children's futures and this sort of thing?
That the choice that we all have, and that I have, you have, we all have, is either to be a stranger in a strange land, or to go along with the flow. Let the world shape you and inform you and sort of conform to the expectations of the world, which is it's a very sort of a basic live for yourself, get what you can get, maximize your pleasure, minimize your pain. I mean, that's what our society promotes. You know, it's all about self-gratification. Or what was promoted by Jesus was putting the interests of other people ahead of your own. So my gratification is trying to be of some use to other people. And what that means is by being interested in them and caring about them. And hopefully doing no harm. Number one, don't do harm. Don't say stupid things. Don't do stupid things. And trying to see to their interests, you know, in any way that I can, if they want it. I mean, I don't try to impose this on anyone. This is really, really important, that I'm not trying to promote me or what I believe on people. It's like my life is full of people that are seeking me. I don't have to go out and find them. It's you know, when people find out, like when I was at the university before I started going to seminary, after my experience, the foyer to my office was packed with students, because the word got out. And this was not just students in my area, it's like from all over the university. They're waiting to see me because they found a faculty member who would listen to them and care about them. And you know what? There aren't many of those around.
Yeah, I know.
And it was really funny, because it's like my whole day was like all these students all wanting to have an appointment with me. I mean, I didn't know them. I'd never seen them before. They were just coming from all over. When people find out that you actually are a caring human being, a loving human being, a compassionate human being, you're attractive, because it's a rare commodity. And that's what I mean by being a stranger in a strange land, because you're somehow different. And by the way, there's plenty of people that won't appreciate that, and they'll let you know it.
Mhm.
you know, and tell you you're a fool, you're an idiot, you're, that's okay. That's, fine. You can call me anything you want. I'm sorry. You know, I don't care. I don't, when people attack you, it's just their stuff. It has nothing to do with what you're doing. I mean, I know that I'm doing the right thing, to the best of my ability.
So being such a public figure, has your discipleship drawn out adversarial forces
Oh yeah. Yeah.
routinely?
Yeah. But I just don't pay much attention to it. I love that line from the Mad Max movie, just walk away. Just like, fine, call me a fraud, call me, I mean, I've been called all kinds of things, fine. That's what you want to think about me. Let's have at it.
Well, Reverend Storm, this has been wonderful. And I really looked forward to this for a long, long time.
Oh, great. Good to get to talk with you a little bit.
Yeah, and I think our audience will be really appreciative.
Okay. I just want to say, if you guys work the program, you know what? I really believe that the program came to Bill from God. I honestly think that he had some sort of near-death experience, divine revelation, and that whole program, and subsequently developing it with the doctor and all that stuff, that it was guided, and it's a huge force in the world, that came from the supreme being, the almighty, whatever you want to call that, that, and of course there is no name adequate to call it, cosmic consciousness, whatever. And that I think it's a real instrument for bringing human beings up to a whole new level of being human.
I sometimes think of it as an anonymous Christianity.
Yeah, I like that term too.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so very much, and we will be in touch.